Most people believe leadership begins the moment someone starts watching them. The moment eyes turn toward them, expectations rise, applause becomes possible, and judgment feels real. But Marcus Aurelius would quietly disagree. He would say leadership begins much earlier, in a place far more difficult to reach. It begins in the moments where no one is watching, where no reward is promised, and where no punishment is guaranteed. It begins in the private space between who you are and who you pretend to be. Imagine Marcus Aurelius, not as the emperor carved in marble, but as a tired man at dawn. Rome is silent. The armies are asleep. No crowd waits for wisdom. No senate demands strength. It is just him, sitting with his thoughts, opening his journal, writing words that were never meant to be read by anyone else. Meditations was not a book for the world. It was a mirror. And every line he wrote was an act of self-leadership. He reminds himself that no one can force him to abandon his character. He reminds himself that doing the right thing does not require an audience. He writes because he knows something dangerous about human nature. When no one is watching, that is when we negotiate with ourselves. That is when we lower standards. That is when excuses sound reasonable. And that is exactly why self-leadership matters most there. Leading yourself when no one is watching means choosing discipline over comfort in silence. It means telling the truth when a lie would go unnoticed. It means getting up early not because someone will praise you, but because you respect the promise you made to yourself. Marcus Aurelius warns that the soul becomes stained not by grand betrayals, but by small private compromises repeated daily. Think about how often motivation disappears when recognition disappears. How often effort fades when praise fades. How often morality bends when consequences seem absent. Marcus Aurelius calls this weakness slavery, not slavery to another person, but slavery to impulse, to laziness, to fear, to pleasure. He believed a person ruled by their impulses is never truly free, even if they wear a crown. True freedom, he says, comes from governing yourself. And governing yourself requires practice when no one is watching. Not when you feel inspired, not when the outcome is visible, but when the action feels heavy and meaningless, especially then. There is a powerful moment in Stoic philosophy where Marcus Aurelius says, "You should do what nature demands of you, even if no one knows you did it." Because virtue does not need witnesses, it needs consistency. He believed character is revealed not in public greatness, but in private routine. Picture two versions of the same person. One behaves with discipline, patience, and integrity only when observed. The other behaves the same way in isolation. Marcus Aurelius would say only one of them is truly strong. The first is performing. The second is practicing mastery. This is where modern minds struggle. We are trained to chase external validation, likes, views, applause, status. But Stoicism teaches something radical. Your worth is not measured by how many people see your effort, but by how closely your actions align with reason and virtue. Especially in solitude, leading yourself means having standards that do not collapse in private. It means treating your own mind as something sacred, something you refuse to poison with excuses or self-deception. Marcus Aurelius warned that the greatest enemy is not chaos outside you, but disorder within you. When you delay important work because no one is demanding it, that is a failure of self-leadership. When you indulge in habits that weaken you because no one will catch you, that is a failure of self-leadership. When you abandon discipline because the reward is far away, that is a failure of self-leadership. But the opposite is also true. Every time you choose effort over ease and silence, you strengthen something invisible but powerful. You become reliable to yourself. And once you become reliable to yourself, you become unbreakable by circumstances. Marcus Aurelius believed the mind should be trained like a fortress, not to block out life, but to remain steady regardless of life. And fortresses are not built during battles. They are built long before, stone by stone, day by day, unnoticed. This is why he wrote reminders to himself like, wake up and do the work of a human being, not the work of an emperor, not the work of a hero, just the work of a human being, honest, rational, disciplined, calm. Leading yourself when no one is watching is not about intensity. It is about continuity. It is about showing up in small ways every day. Marcus Aurelius knew greatness is not a sudden rise. It is the natural result of quiet consistency. If you cannot command yourself in private, you will never command respect in public. If you cannot control your impulses when alone, you will be controlled by circumstances when surrounded. This is why Stoic philosophy does not begin with changing the world. It begins with ruling your own mind. And the hardest part is this: no one will clap for you when you win these inner battles. No one will know when you resist temptation. No one will celebrate when you stay disciplined. But Marcus Aurelius would say that is exactly what makes it noble. Virtue done for applause is fragile. Virtue done in silence is permanent. The moment you realize that your true audience is your own conscience, everything changes. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop performing and start becoming. This is where real leadership is born. Not in meetings, not in titles, not in authority over others, but in the quiet moments where you choose who you are when nothing forces you to choose. And this is only the beginning. There is a moment Marcus Aurelius describes that most people read too quickly. He says you have power over your mind, not outside events. And if you realize this, you will find strength. This is not motivational language. It is instruction. He is telling you where leadership truly lives, not in controlling people, not in shaping outcomes, but in governing your internal response when nothing external pressures you to behave. Well, most people wait for structure to behave correctly. A boss, a deadline, a camera, a consequence. But Marcus Aurelius understood something unsettling. If your discipline depends on structure, then the moment structure disappears, so does your character. That is not strength. That is dependency. Leading yourself when no one is watching means you do not need external walls to stay upright. You become your own structure. You become your own witness. This is difficult because it removes excuses. You cannot blame chaos. You cannot blame people. You cannot blame circumstances. You are left alone with your choices. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the universe does not care if he complains. Time will move forward whether he resists or not. This realization forces a question that defines self-leadership. Will you act according to reason or will you react according to impulse? Impulse is easy. It feels natural. It whispers that rest can wait, that discipline can start tomorrow, that one small compromise does not matter. Marcus Aurelius calls the voice childish. Not because it is loud, but because it seeks comfort without wisdom. Reason is quieter. It does not beg. It does not threaten. It simply presents what must be done. And following reason when no one is watching is the purest form of leadership, because there is no emotional reward, only alignment. Imagine an emperor with absolute power choosing restraint when no law could stop him. That is what makes Marcus Aurelius extraordinary. He was not good because he was forced to be. He was good because he chose to be, repeatedly, privately, when indulgence would have been easy. This is why Stoicism insists that your habits define you more than your intentions. What you do alone shapes how you act everywhere. The mind practices what it repeats. If you train yourself to avoid effort in private, you will avoid responsibility in public. If you train yourself to act with integrity when unseen, integrity becomes effortless. Leading yourself means you do not wait to feel like it. Marcus Aurelius warned against trusting emotions as guides. Emotions fluctuate. Reason endures. Discipline is not about intensity. It is about obedience to your highest values, even when enthusiasm is absent. There is a dangerous myth that freedom means doing whatever you want when no one is watching. Marcus Aurelius would say the opposite. True freedom is not being dragged by desire. The person who cannot resist temptation in solitude is not free. They are predictable, controlled, weak. This is why self-leadership feels heavy at first, because you are breaking old agreements with comfort. You are refusing to be governed by mood. You are choosing to act as the person you respect, not the person who seeks ease. Marcus Aurelius believed every action is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. When no one is watching, the vote still counts. In fact, it counts more. Because it is honest. There is no performance, only truth. When you train yourself to act rightly without witnesses, you gain something rare, inner stability. You stop needing permission to do what is necessary. You stop negotiating with laziness. You stop depending on motivation. You act because it is time to act. This is what Stoics meant by dignity. Not pride, not arrogance, quiet self-respect. The knowledge that you do not abandon your principles just because no one is present to enforce them. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how short life is, how quickly names fade, how even emperors become dust. This awareness was not meant to depress him, it sharpened him. It reminded him that every moment is an opportunity to practice virtue, especially when no one else notices. Because in the end, history does not measure your private discipline, but your soul does, and your soul remembers everything. There is a subtle test Marcus Aurelius believed reveals the true state of a person, how they behave when the outcome does not matter, when success is not guaranteed, when failure carries no public shame. This is where most people relax their standards. And this is where Stoic self-leadership either collapses or becomes unshakable. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should never act as if you are going to live 10,000 years. He did not mean rush blindly. He meant do not postpone becoming the person you respect. Do not delay discipline. Do not delay courage, especially not in private moments where no one will punish you for delay. When no one is watching, time becomes your only witness. And time is honest. It records patterns. It does not care about your intentions. It only responds to what you repeatedly choose. This is why Marcus Aurelius focused so much on daily conduct. Not dramatic transformation, not sudden enlightenment, but daily alignment. Leading yourself is rarely dramatic. It looks ordinary. You wake up when you said you would. You do the work you promised yourself you would do. You stop scrolling when you know it is weakening your focus. You speak honestly even when silence would be easier. These actions do not feel heroic, and that is exactly why they matter. Marcus Aurelius warned against confusing pleasure with good. Pleasure is immediate, good is enduring. Pleasure asks how something feels now. Good asks who you become after repeating it. When no one is watching, pleasure feels safe. There is no audience to judge indulgence. But Stoicism teaches that indulgence judges you quietly over time. Every private compromise trains the mind to expect ease. Every private act of discipline trains the mind to expect effort. The mind adapts to whatever you feed it. Marcus Aurelius understood this long before modern psychology. He knew character is conditioned. This is why he treated his thoughts with suspicion. He questioned them. He corrected them. He reminded himself that thoughts shape actions, and actions shape identity. Leading yourself means monitoring this inner dialogue, especially when it tries to justify weakness. It is easy to believe that small lapses do not matter. Marcus Aurelius would disagree. He believed decay begins invisibly, not with collapse, but with neglect. You do not lose discipline all at once. You surrender it one excuse at a time. The Stoic response to this is not self-hatred. It is awareness, calm correction. You notice the drift and return to principle, again and again, without drama, without self-punishment, just steady realignment. Marcus Aurelius did not believe in perfection. He believed in practice. He wrote reminders to himself because he knew he would forget. Forgetfulness is human. Returning to reason is leadership. When you lead yourself consistently in private, something changes externally without effort. You become calm under pressure. You become reliable in chaos. You stop being shaken by uncertainty because you have trained yourself in the hardest environment of all, solitude. Most people fear being alone with themselves. They fill silence with noise because silence exposes truth. Marcus Aurelius embraced silence. It was where he refined his mind. It was where he strengthened resolve. It was where he remembered who he was meant to be. Leading yourself when no one is watching also means forgiving yourself quickly but correcting yourself immediately. You do not dwell. You do not spiral. You adjust. Stoicism is not about guilt. It is about responsibility. Responsibility means you do not outsource your values. You do not wait for approval. You do not need surveillance to behave well. You choose integrity because it is rational, not because it is rewarded. Marcus Aurelius believed that if you do what is right, The rest does not matter. Reputation, recognition, outcome, all of it is external. Your only true possession is your character, and character is built in rooms with no mirrors. Marcus Aurelius understood something that modern life constantly tries to hide. Distraction is not harmless. It is a slow erosion of self-command. When no one is watching, distraction becomes tempting because it feels deserved. You tell yourself you have worked enough, endured enough, sacrificed enough. And in that quiet moment, discipline is traded for comfort. He would remind himself that the mind becomes shaped by what it repeatedly returns to. If it returns to ease, it becomes soft. If it returns to effort, it becomes steady. Leading yourself is deciding where your mind returns when it has no obligations pulling it in any direction. There is a reason Marcus Aurelius advised withdrawing into yourself. Not to escape life, but to recalibrate. Solitude, used correctly, is not loneliness. It is training. It is where you confront the gap between who you are and who you claim to be. Most people avoid this gap. They fill their time to avoid noticing it. But Stoic leadership begins by facing it calmly, without excuses, without drama. You acknowledge where you fall short and you correct course. Quietly, when no one is watching, your mind reveals its true priorities. What you choose to think about, what you choose to consume, what you choose to delay. These are not accidents. They are reflections. Marcus Aurelius believed that if you want to know what rules you, look at what you cannot resist. This is why he warned against becoming dependent on pleasures, praise, or even rest. Dependence creates vulnerability, and vulnerability destroys self-leadership. He often reminded himself that nothing external can corrupt your character without your consent. This includes comfort. Comfort only weakens you if you surrender to it repeatedly. Leading yourself means sometimes denying yourself what feels good in order to preserve what is good. There is a quiet confidence that develops when you keep promises to yourself. It does not announce itself. It does not seek attention, but it stabilizes you. Marcus Aurelius trusted this inner stability more than any external power. This is why he did not chase happiness. He chased alignment. He believed peace is the side effect of living according to reason, not the reward for pleasure. When no one is watching, alignment becomes the goal, not appearance. Many people act virtuously to maintain an image. The Stoic acts virtuously to maintain clarity. Image requires witnesses, clarity does not. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike the one who wronged you. But he also practiced something deeper. He refused to become unlike himself when no one was present to hold him accountable. This is where true strength lies, in the refusal to abandon principles simply because consequences are absent, in the decision to act well even when the universe is silent. Leading yourself also means accepting boredom without escaping it, accepting effort without complaint, accepting discomfort without resentment. These moments sharpen the will. They teach the mind that it does not need constant stimulation to function. Marcus Aurelius believed that if you can endure the moment in front of you, you can endure any moment. And endurance is trained when no one is watching. Over time, this private discipline creates public calm. You stop overreacting, you stop chasing validation, you stop fearing judgment, because you already know who you are when no one is there to see you. And that knowledge becomes your anchor. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that life does not ask permission before testing you. Pressure arrives unannounced. Loss does not schedule itself. Chaos does not wait until you feel ready. This is why he trained himself in advance, not through speeches or promises, but through quiet discipline practiced in moments that seemed insignificant. When no one is watching, you are either preparing for difficulty or preparing for collapse. There is no neutral state. Every small choice conditions how you respond when circumstances become heavy. Marcus Aurelius believed that resilience is rehearsed in peace, not discovered in crisis. Most people believe they will rise to the occasion when difficulty arrives. Stoicism rejects this hope. You do not rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training. And your training happens when nothing urgent is demanding your best. Leading yourself means practicing calm before calm is necessary. Practicing restraint before temptation becomes strong. Practicing focus before distraction overwhelms you. This preparation is invisible, but it determines everything. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about accepting fate, not as passive surrender, but as intelligent cooperation with reality. When no one is watching, acceptance becomes easier because ego is quiet. There is no need to perform resistance. You simply adjust. This adjustment requires humility. You stop arguing with reality. You stop wishing things were different. You ask one simple question: what does this moment require of me? And then you do that. Even if it is boring, even if it is uncomfortable, even if no one will ever know. He believed complaining is a misuse of energy. Energy is limited. When wasted on resistance, it cannot be used for action. Leading yourself means conserving energy for what is within your control. Control in Stoic terms does not mean dominance. It means clarity. You focus on your judgments, your actions, your responses. Everything else is treated as neutral. This clarity becomes a habit when practiced in solitude. Marcus Aurelius knew that ego dissolves in isolation. Without witnesses, there is nothing to prove. This can feel empty at first, but in that emptiness, something stronger emerges. Self-respect. Self-respect does not come from applause. It comes from knowing you do not betray yourself. Not for comfort, not for ease, not for approval. When you live this way, confidence becomes quiet and stable. Leading yourself also means accepting that progress is slow. Marcus Aurelius never rushed improvement. He understood that impatience creates frustration, and frustration weakens resolve. He focused on consistency, not speed. Even when he failed, he did not dramatize it. He corrected and continued. No self-hatred, no grand guilt, just adjustment. This is discipline without cruelty. When no one is watching, this calm correction matters. Because panic is contagious. If you panic privately, you will panic public. If you remain steady privately, steadiness becomes natural everywhere. Marcus Aurelius believed that the universe respects effort aligned with reason, not immediately, not dramatically, but over time. This belief allowed him to work without obsession over results. Leading yourself means trusting the process of right action without demanding guarantees. You do what is right because it is right, not because it pays quickly. And in this way, you become reliable to life itself. Marcus Aurelius knew that identity is not what you claim, but what you practice when no one is there to correct you. Titles disappear, roles change, circumstances shift, but habits follow you everywhere. This is why he treated habits as sacred. They were the architecture of character. When no one is watching, habits speak louder than intentions. You may intend to be disciplined, patient, focused, but what you repeat in private reveals what you truly value. Marcus Aurelius believed there is no deception more dangerous than self-deception. He warned himself not to admire intelligence without virtue, not to admire confidence without restraint, and not to admire freedom without responsibility. These reminders were not written for others. They were written to keep himself honest. Leading yourself means refusing to build an identity based on excuses. You stop telling yourself stories about why you cannot act rightly. You accept responsibility without self-pity. This acceptance is not heavy. It is liberating, because once responsibility is accepted, power returns to you. Marcus Aurelius believed that many people suffer not because life is hard, but because they fight what cannot be changed and neglect what can. When no one is watching, this neglect becomes visible. You either take care of your inner world or you let it decay. Decay does not announce itself, it whispers. It tells you skipping one effort is harmless, that delaying one duty is reasonable, that indulging once more does not matter. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to recognize this voice and not obey it. This is why Stoicism values awareness more than willpower. Awareness allows correction before damage spreads. Leading yourself means catching the mind before it drifts too far. When you correct yourself quietly, without anger, without drama, you strengthen self-trust. Over time, you stop doubting your ability to act well. You know you will do what must be done. This certainty removes anxiety. Marcus Aurelius did not chase confidence. He cultivated reliability. Confidence fluctuates with mood. Reliability remains. When no one is watching, reliability is tested. He often reminded himself that nature does not rush. yet everything is accomplished. This patience allowed him to work steadily without needing constant stimulation. Leading yourself means becoming comfortable with slow progress. In solitude, impatience grows loud. You want results. You want proof. You want recognition. Marcus Aurelius would respond with silence and action. He knew that impatience is simply desire wearing urgency as a disguise. By acting without urgency, you act with clarity. You stop forcing outcomes. You focus on quality of effort. This focus is sustainable. Leading yourself also means knowing when to rest without turning rest into escape. Rest restores, escape weakens. The difference is intention. Marcus Aurelius rested to return stronger, not to avoid responsibility. When no one is watching, intention becomes clear. Are you recovering or are you avoiding? Stoic leadership requires honesty here. As this honesty deepens, something subtle happens. You begin to respect yourself, not because you are perfect, but because you are sincere in effort. This respect quiets inner conflict. And when inner conflict fades, energy returns. Marcus Aurelius understood that the mind becomes restless when it lacks direction. When no one is watching, restlessness often disguises itself as boredom. But boredom is not the problem. Lack of purpose is. And purpose is something you must choose repeatedly, especially in private. He believed every person has a role to play simply by being human, to act with reason, to act with justice, to act with self-control. These are not public performances. They are daily obligations. And obligations do not disappear when witnesses do. Leading yourself means honoring your role even when the stage is empty. You do not wait for importance to arrive. You bring importance to what is in front of you. Marcus Aurelius believed dignity comes from doing small things well, not from chasing grand moments. There is a quiet danger in thinking your actions only matter when they are visible. This belief slowly erodes responsibility. You begin to behave as if your private life is separate from who you really are. Stoicism rejects this division. There is only one self, and it is revealed most clearly in solitude. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how quickly people forget, how applause fades, how reputation dissolves. This was not meant to discourage effort, but to free it. When you realize recognition is temporary, you stop depending on it. Leading yourself becomes simpler when you accept this. You do what must be done without asking who will notice. You speak truth without calculating reaction. You maintain discipline without expecting reward. This creates a form of inner independence that few people experience. You are no longer pulled forward by praise or pushed back by criticism. You move according to principle. Marcus Aurelius believed that peace is found when your actions no longer contradict your values. This peace cannot be given by others. It must be built inte, NLE, and it is built when no one is watching. Every time you choose alignment over impulse, you strengthen this peace. Every time you abandon alignment, you disturb it. Over time, the difference becomes undeniable. Leading yourself also means accepting that you will never feel completely ready. Readiness is a comfort fantasy. Marcus Aurelius acted because action was required, not because confidence was guaranteed. He reminded himself that hesitation often appears as thoughtfulness, but thoughtfulness without action becomes avoidance. When no one is watching, avoidance feels safe. Stoic discipline exposes it. This is why Marcus Aurelius emphasized urgency without anxiety. Do what is in front of you now, not tomorrow, not when conditions improve. Now, calmly. When you live this way, procrastination loses its power. You stop bargaining with time. You meet each moment directly. Leading yourself in this manner builds a rare strength, the strength to act without pressure, to endure without bitterness, to continue without applause. And slowly, something profound changes. You stop asking who you are becoming. You know, because you have seen yourself in silence. Marcus Aurelius believed that the final measure of a person is not how they act when life is loud, but how they act when life is quiet. When distractions fall away, when obligations pause, when the world stops demanding, what remains is the truth of your character. When no one is watching, you meet yourself without filters. There is no role to perform, no image to maintain, no story to protect. This meeting can feel uncomfortable because it removes illusion. But Stoicism teaches that discomfort is not an enemy. It is information. Leading yourself means listening to that information without fear. You notice where you resist effort. You notice where you seek escape. You notice where you avoid responsibility. And instead of condemning yourself, you correct yourself. Marcus Aurelius did not believe in harshness toward the self. He believed in firmness paired with compassion. You do not break yourself into discipline, you guide yourself into it. He often reminded himself that life is short and the present moment is all that truly exists. This awareness sharpens choice. When you realize how little time you have, you stop wasting it on internal conflict. You simplify, you act. Leading yourself becomes an act of respect for time. You stop postponing growth. You stop delaying integrity. You stop telling yourself that tomorrow will be easier. Tomorrow is uncertain. This moment is real. When no one is watching, your actions either honor this moment or betray it. Marcus Aurelius chose honor, again and again, quietly. He understood that leadership is not control over others, it is coherence within yourself. When your thoughts, actions, and values align, resistance fades, you are no longer divided. And a divided mind is the weakest state a person can live in. As this alignment deepens, you no longer need reminders. Discipline becomes natural. Integrity becomes automatic. Calm becomes your default. Not because life is easy, but because your response is trained. This is the reward of self-leadership practiced in silence. You do not need to prove strength. You carry it. You do not need validation. You possess clarity. You do not fear isolation. You have learned to stand with yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote for a future he would never see, yet his message survives because it speaks to something timeless. The human struggle to govern the self. Leading yourself when no one is watching is not glamorous, it is not praised, it is not celebrated, but it is transformative. Because the person you become in silence is the person who will stand firm when the world is loud. And when the moment comes, you will not ask what to do. The essence of leadership, according to Marcus Aurelius, is far subtler than many imagine. It does not appear in grand gestures, in commands, or in visible victories. It resides in the unobserved, the silent spaces where no applause exists, no scrutiny follows, and no consequence demands compliance. In these spaces, a person is most vulnerable and paradoxically most powerful. The moment no one is watching is the true test of character, and it is here that the seeds of self-mastery are planted, watered, and cultivated. This is the arena of authentic strength. Imagine a quiet morning in ancient Rome. The city is slowly awakening, streets are empty, and the usual din of life has yet to arrive. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the most powerful empire in the world, does not stride into the public eye with ceremonial pomp. He does not lecture generals or impress senators at this hour. He is alone, seated at a simple wooden table, a wax tablet in hand, his thoughts streaming as he writes what history would later call meditations. There is no audience, no expectation of praise. There is only him, the blank page, and the uncompromising truth of his own mind. In this solitude, leadership is not a performance. It is a choice repeated daily, quietly, with precision and honesty. He understood that human beings are often seduced by the allure of recognition. Praise feels like validation. Applause feels like achievement. Public approval masks private negligence. Many believe that the presence of witnesses elevates behavior, but Marcus Aurelius recognized the dangerous reverse. When the world does not watch, weakness tempts, laziness whispers, and compromise appears reasonable. Here, when no eyes are upon you, character either solidifies or disintegrates. Self-leadership is the courage to act rightly in these invisible moments, to choose principle over comfort, duty over ease, and reason over impulse. The unobserved life is, paradoxically, the arena of the most profound accountability. He often reminded himself that external circumstances can never dictate virtue. No triumph, no defeat, no acclaim, and no insult holds the power to corrupt unless the mind consents. This is an essential truth in Stoic philosophy. Control resides only within. The empire, with its armies, wealth, and status, is irrelevant if one's soul is unruly. When no one is watching, the ordinary mind is laid bare. Impulses, indulgences, excuses, and fears all emerge unmasked. Marcus Aurelius knew that responding correctly in this private sphere determines the nature of public conduct. A disciplined mind in solitude is unshakable when storms arrive. Consider the ordinary moments that seem trivial but are in fact formative. Rising early, choosing labor over leisure, restraining indulgent thought, speaking truth without audience approval, performing small acts of virtue without expectation of recognition. These are the exercises of unseen strength. Every choice made in isolation is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the cumulative weight of these choices. The mind, he taught, is sculpted not by grand events, but by repeated alignment with reason, moment by moment, day by day. When no one is watching, the soul silently observes, recording loyalty or betrayal, courage or weakness. The unobserved self is also a place where honesty is forged. Most people deceive themselves constantly. They believe minor deviations from principle are inconsequential. A lie told in private feels harmless. A promise broken when unseen seems trivial. Yet these micro-decisions erode integrity far more efficiently than any public failure. Marcus Aurelius recognized this danger and counseled himself relentlessly, never calm. Promise when convenience tempts. Never indulge impulse when reason instructs. Self-deception is the deadliest adversary because it thrives in solitude where no witness can intervene. Mastery begins with refusing to permit self-deception, even in the quietest hour. Discipline, according to Marcus Aurelius, is fundamentally an act of courage. It is easier to follow desire than principle. When no one is observing, there is no fear of shame, no immediate punishment, and no social pressure to restrain excess. Yet true leadership requires action precisely under these conditions. Choosing effort over comfort, restraint over indulgence, and purpose over distraction when the rewards are unseen is the hallmark of a disciplined mind. It is here, in unseen routine, that character is tempered like steel in the forge. Each act of self-restraint builds resilience, patience, and inner authority. The emperor's power was not inherited from throne or army. It was developed quietly, moment by moment, in private self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius believed that freedom is inseparable from self-command. The person enslaved to impulses, pleasure, fear, anger, or desire, is a prisoner even in wealth and power. When no one is watching, the mind is free to succumb to every temptation. This is why self-leadership is essential. It secures true freedom. The unobserved decisions define the boundaries of liberty. Each time you govern yourself without supervision, you expand your independence. Each time you surrender to impulse, you contract it. The quiet moments of choice, unremarkable and unseen, are the battleground of liberty. The Stoic discipline also requires awareness. Awareness of thought, action, and intention. Awareness exposes where weakness resides and allows correction. Marcus Aurelius practiced vigilance over his internal dialogue. He questioned every impulse, examined every motivation, and measured every action against reason. Leading oneself in solitude means observing without indulgence, correcting without harshness, and cultivating habits that strengthen virtue rather than undermine it. It is not punishment. It is training, a continuous exercise in alignment with the rational mind. Every unobserved moment carries an opportunity to build strength. The mind practices what it repeatedly engages. If laziness dominates in private, it will dominate in public. If distraction reigns, focus erodes. If indulgence prevails, character softens. Conversely, repeated discipline, patience, and virtue in solitude condition the mind to remain steadfast in the face of external turbulence. Marcus Aurelius knew that character is not discovered in crisis. It is forged in calm, unglamorous, and unseen commitment to principle. Imagine living each day as though your soul is the only witness that matters. Imagine making choices solely because they are right, not because they are praised. Marcus Aurelius teaches that this is the path to inner peace. Recognition, applause, and external success are transient. The judgment of the self is lasting. Leading oneself when no one observes cultivates consistency, integrity, and a quiet confidence that is immune to public scrutiny. It is a confidence that does not boast because it does not rely on approval. It is self-sufficient, built upon repeated fidelity to reason and virtue. Leading yourself also involves patience with growth. Marcus Aurelius understood that improvement is gradual. Character is not transformed overnight. Discipline accumulates imperceptibly through daily alignment with rational principles. He encouraged himself to persist even when effort feels invisible, rewards are absent, and progress seems slow. Self-leadership is the art of steady, invisible refinement, repeated without expectation, repeated without audi. This is the practice that strengthens the mind to endure any external circumstance. Perhaps most profoundly, Marcus Aurelius reminds us that life itself is fleeting. The applause of the crowd fades, power dissipates, wealth passes, recognition disappears. Yet the person you become in solitude remains. The choices you make when unobserved define who you are permanently. Leading oneself in these moments is an investment in timeless character, an inheritance beyond material or social rewards. This is the essence of Stoic thought. Cultivate virtue, govern yourself, and all else will fall into its proper place. When the world becomes loud, when pressure arrives, when chaos demands action, it is this private training that sustains you. You will not hesitate. You will not crumble. You will not rely on fortune, praise, or audience to guide your hand. Marcus Aurelius understood that true mastery of life is first mastery of self. Self-leadership in the unseen spaces prepares one for leadership in all visible arenas. Strength earned quietly manifests in public naturally, effortlessly, without performance. So, when you find yourself alone, remember that these moments are the true test. These moments determine whether your mind is a fortress or a playground for impulse. They decide whether your soul is steady or swayed by every passing wind. Marcus Aurelius teaches that what you do in solitude is not trivial. It is the measure of your integrity, the proof of your discipline, and the foundation of freedom. Every day, in every choice unobserved, you have the opportunity to lead yourself, to act rightly, to cultivate virtue, to align with reason, and to fortify your inner life. The unobserved life is the real crucible of power, the silent arena of true leadership, and the birthplace of unshakable character. Mastery over self when no one watches is not optional. It is essential, and it is the truest form of greatness. Marcus Aurelius often reflected that the most difficult battles are not waged on distant fields or in the chambers of power, but within the quiet confines of one's own mind. When no one is watching, when the clamor of the world fades, the raw material of character is revealed. In these unobserved moments, choices accumulate, habits solidify, and the soul either strengthens or decays. This, he believed, is the truest measure of leadership, for leadership begins not with the command of others, but with mastery over self. It begins in silence, in the ordinary, in the unseen. The world applauds spectacle, but it is the unseen discipline, the private vigilance, the quiet acts of virtue that define greatness in a way that lasts. Every thought, every action, every fleeting decision becomes a brushstroke in the portrait of the self. And when you finally stand in the world, the quality of that portrait reveals itself. Imagine waking before dawn, as Marcus Aurelius did. The city still sleeping, the air heavy with silence, and nothing external demanding your attention. There is no ceremonial greeting to perform, no counsel to impress, no record to leave. You sit, perhaps with a wax tablet, perhaps with no writing at all, and face yourself. What do you see? Impulses, excuses, desires, fears, each quietly seeking indulgence. Here, you are at the crossroads between ease and principle, comfort and duty, indulgence and integrity. This is the decisive arena. The mind left alone either bends to temptation or strengthens in alignment with reason. Marcus Aurelius would choose the latter. Each choice made in solitude becomes a statement. I govern myself. I am not subject to whim. I am the master of my own character. The quiet, unseen victory is more powerful than any public accolade because it endures, shaping every future decision without requiring reinforcement. He recognized that humans are naturally inclined to comfort and avoidance. We seek immediate pleasure, delayed effort, and validation from others. When no one is watching, these tendencies intensify. The mind whispers, rest more, indulge more, delay more. We tell ourselves that small compromises are harmless, that minor deviations from principle will not matter. Yet Marcus Aurelius warned that the soul keeps a ledger, and even the tiniest neglect, repeated in silence, compounds into moral erosion. Leadership of self is the courage to act rightly precisely when there is no reward, when the act is unnoticed, when the comfort of indulgence calls most loudly. It is in these ordinary, invisible moments that true greatness is forged. One cannot rely on fortune, applause, or fear of consequence to maintain virtue. It must be cultivated in solitude. Consider the nature of freedom, as Marcus Aurelius understood it. True freedom is not the absence of external constraints. It is mastery over internal impulses. The person who cannot resist desire, anger, laziness, or fear, even when unsupervised, is not free. They are a slave to momentary sensation, vulnerable to every passing mood and circumstance. Self-leadership secures liberty by training the mind to act according to reason rather than emotion. When no one observes, when desire is strongest and accountability absent, the choices made define the scope of personal freedom. Each act of self-restraint, each disciplined action, expands liberty. Each act of indulgence or avoidance shrinks it. Solitude is the testing ground where freedom is earned or lost, and it is in these unseen battles that the foundation for an unshakable life is laid. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the universe is indifferent. Time passes, empires rise and fall, applause fades, and even memory decays. This is not a cease all to despair, but to clarity. Recognition is fleeting, consequences uncertain, yet the choices of the present moment are fully within your control. Leading oneself means acting rightly, not for reward, not for appearance, not for future validation, but because the action itself is the expression of reason and virtue. The unobserved life is a proving ground, where integrity, patience, courage, and wisdom are exercised as ends in themselves. To live this way is to accept responsibility without distraction, to embrace duty without compulsion, and to cultivate excellence without witnesses. He observed that the mind is like a field. If neglected, weeds of laziness, impulse, and distraction overtake it. If cultivated, it produces fruits of clarity, courage, and sustained virtue. In solitude, cultivation requires vigilance. Every idle thought, every temptation to postpone, every whisper of self-indulgence is an opportunity to strengthen resolve. Marcus Aurelius advised himself to question every thought, measure every motivation, and align every action with reason. Self-leadership is an ongoing practice, never complete, requiring constant attention even in the absence of external accountability. The mind left unchecked in private becomes a tyrant. The mind governed consistently becomes a fortress. The Stoic approach to difficulty extends to failure. Marcus Aurelius knew that mistakes, lapses, and moral missteps would occur. What matters is not their absence, but the response to them. When no one is watching, the mind can rationalize, excuse, and delay correction. Yet leadership of self demands immediate acknowledgement, reflection, and adjustment. Do not dwell in guilt. Do not dramatize failure. Do not indulge self-pity. Recognize the error, correct the course, and continue. In private, these acts of correction strengthen self-trust, sharpen judgment, and refine moral ends. Over time, this repeated fidelity to principle in solitude forms an inner authority that no external circumstance can shake. Leading oneself when unseen is also a practice of patience. Marcus Aurelius understood that the formation of character is gradual. The mind does not transform in a single dramatic event, nor does virtue emerge in a day. It is forged through repetition, subtle alignment, and incremental mastery. Rising early, speaking truth quietly, restraining indulgence, focusing without oversight, acting with courage without reward. These are small acts repeated tirelessly They build strength in layers, imperceptible at first, undeniable over time. The Stoic cultivates patience with self-improvement, understanding that persistence in ordinary acts underpins extraordinary stability in crisis. Consider the interplay of thought and action. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that unexamined thoughts shape the life you live, whether public or private. Impulses left unchecked in solitude determine public behavior. Temptation indulged quietly becomes a habit, and habit dictates the character. Awareness of the mind is therefore essential. Monitor your inner dialogue, question your motives, challenge your assumptions, correct deception or weakness before it manifests externally. Leading oneself is a vigilant practice. Observe, discern, act in alignment with reason, and repeat. Each cycle strengthens the rational self and weakens impulsive distraction. One of the profound lessons Marcus Aurelius offers is the distinction between what is within your control and what is not. External circumstances, fortune, power, wealth, reputation, cannot dictate virtue. Only your judgments and actions can. In solitude, this principle becomes unmistakably clear. There is no one to enforce morality, no one to reward diligence, no one to punish failure. You act because you are responsible. To your rational self, not because consequence dictates it. This internal accountability is the root of freedom, the source of resilience, and the wellspring of unshakable stability. Self-leadership is the courage to hold oneself accountable when no external authority exists. Marcus Aurelius also taught that discomfort, boredom, and resistance are not enemies, but instruments. When no one is watching, the mind naturally seeks ease. Effort feels burdensome. Routine feels dull. The temptation to escape is strongest. Yet these very moments are where virtue is exercised and strengthened. Choosing effort, discipline, and focus when it is hardest cultivates stamina, resilience, and integrity. Each act of unseen diligence shapes the future self, fortifying it against external pressures, sudden crises, and the unpredictable turbulence of life. The discipline practiced privately becomes effortless in public, and the rational self emerges naturally in any circumstance. Solitude reveals both weakness and potential. Marcus Aurelius understood that the unobserved self is where we encounter temptation, laziness, fear, anger, and desire. But it is also the space where rationality, courage, patience, wisdom, and virtue are exercised and perfected. Leadership of self is the conscious choice to strengthen these qualities. The Stoic mind measures every action against reason, aligns impulse with principle, and treats every decision, however small or unseen, as a vital step in moral and personal development. This is where mastery of life truly begins. He warned against dependence on external validation. Praise and recognition are fleeting. Relying upon them is a subtle form of slavery. The Stoic chooses virtue for its own sake. Self-leadership, then, is the cultivation of consistency, acting rightly whether admired or ignored, rewarded or unrewarded, observed or unseen. This consistency, maintained over years, creates a mind unshaken by fortune, resilient in adversity, and unwavering in principle. Marcus Aurelius shows that public leadership flows naturally from private mastery. The person who governs themselves quietly in solitude is prepared to act decisively and virtuously when life demands visibility. Finally, Marcus Aurelius teaches that life is transient. All external glories fade. Recognition, power, and wealth are temporary. Only the character shaped in solitude endures. Every action, every choice, every private exercise of discipline contributes to an enduring self. To lead oneself when no one watches is to secure what is truly lasting: integrity, clarity, and freedom. Each unseen effort accumulates, like stones laid patiently to build a fortress. This fortress of character cannot be destroyed by circumstance, opinion, or fortune. It becomes the foundation from which all visible actions arise, the anchor of resilience, and the source of authentic strength. Leading oneself in the unobserved moments is the highest form of leadership, the truest preparation for life, and the ultimate expression of Stoic wisdom. In conclusion, when no one observes, You face the raw truth of who you are. You see impulses, excuses, and desires, and you choose reason, discipline, and virtue. You act with integrity without expectation, courage without audience, patience without reward. Marcus Aurelius teaches that these unobserved acts shape the soul, cultivate freedom, and fortify character. The person who masters self in solitude stands unshaken in public. The unseen discipline becomes visible resilience. The silent courage becomes manifest wisdom. Leadership begins here, in the quiet, uncelebrated, uncompromising practice of self-mastery. This is where greatness is born, where freedom is claimed, and where the human spirit achieves its highest expression. To lead oneself when no one is watching is to live as the Stoics intended, aligned, rational, disciplined, and unbreakable.